Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this is La Casa de Katie, my YouTube channel where I do a lot of videos about lifestyle, faith, and adoption. In this video today, I want to talk about some of the reasons why we fall into post-adoption depression or the post-adoption blues, whatever you want to call it. And also I want to give you a few tips of things that can help you get out of your post-adoption depression. If you missed my video last week, I talked about post-adoption depression and some of the signs that you may be experiencing post-adoption depression in your own life. So if you missed that, be sure to click on my channel and go find that video before you watch this next one. As I shared in my last video, I'm an adoptive mom. I have a daughter who is 2. We were placed with her close to a year ago now, and I feel like we're coming out of that stage of that difficult beginning year, and we're starting to feel a lot more adjusted. And I just want to make this video to help you know that you're not alone. You're not the only one who's felt this way, and it doesn't last forever. So I hope that this video is really helpful for you. And if it is, can you go ahead and like it and share it with other adoptive parents you know who you think it may help. So why does post-adoption depression happen? Like, where does it come from? Because obviously we don't have these hormonal changes going on in our bodies, but those feelings are very real and very common. When you're adopting, you're building up for either years or months in preparation, waiting to be matched, traveling, or whatever you have to do if you're internationally adopting, and then all of a sudden it happens and that part's over, and now there's nothing to look forward to anymore. So at some point, that honeymoon period of all those warm and fuzzy feelings of you meeting your child, maybe visiting your child, and just being so excited about them moving into your life, into your family, into your home, those are going to fade. And usually they start fading when your kid becomes a little more comfortable, which sounds weird, but in those first few weeks, you may notice that your child is acting really good all the time. Like when our daughter moved in, I was like, wow, we just knocked it out of the park with this whole toddler thing, because our toddler doesn't get into anything. She wouldn't open drawers she wasn't supposed to. She wouldn't open little cabinets she wasn't supposed to. She wouldn't touch my houseplants. She was acting like an older kid who knew not to touch those things. And I just chalked it up to, wow, her foster parents must have trained her really well, and she must just be amazing at this stuff. And she was like, you know, responding to me cuddling her and rocking her to sleep, and she seemed happy with us. She wanted to sit in my lap and play with me all the time. We laughed together. And then all of a sudden, all of that stopped. Instead, those nice warm fuzzy moments were filled with, let's see, her hitting me, kicking me, biting me. And I didn't mention this, but this was only to me. My husband may have gotten hit a couple of times, but I mean, for me, when I was home with her, I was getting hit, bit, kicked all day long. I mean, all day. And I don't know if you've ever had a biter in your house, but it psychologically wears on you. And so when that's happening and that honeymoon period is over, you might be left thinking, oh no, like, why is my kid doing this all of a sudden? Do they hate us or whatever? And oftentimes, really, that's not the case. Usually they're becoming a little bit more comfortable. And at that point is when our daughter started getting into everything in our house and like touching my plants and opening up cabinets. And then that anger part of post-adoption depression started coming up a little bit more. And that was a little surprising, but the honeymoon does end. So just so you know. Another really hard part of the honeymoon period ending is the rejection. My daughter rejected me so much. Like I mentioned with the biting, hitting, all that stuff. But I mean, I would walk in the door and she would say, no, no, mommy, and run away. And that is still a problem with us, especially because I work. My husband actually stays home with our daughter. When I come home from work, she is mad. Like, she's angry that I left, and she says, no, mommy, and runs away. And that does not feel good, especially because most kids don't do that. Most kids run to their parents and give them a hug when they come home, or at least say hi. At least our daughter's 2, so most 2-year-olds are happy to see their parents when they get home. So that is something that we've had to just deal with, and that started when that honeymoon period ended. Another reason that people experience post-adoption depression is because of expectations versus reality. So the first part of that is the expectations that you had of your child, like I mentioned earlier. If you were expecting your child to maybe be troubled at first, but once you loved them, they would just all of a sudden magically transform and be amazing, then you may experience post-adoption depression from that, because that's probably not going to happen. So the higher your expectations are for your child's behavior, probably the more disappointed you are going to feel. Now, there are cases where kids are not really struggling that much with behavior when they first move into a home, or even for the first couple of months, but that is very rare. So I think those expectations can sometimes lead to that disappointment, and then you kind of fall into this cycle of feeling depressed and hopeless and ashamed and all of those other feelings. And the other category is the expectations you have of yourself. And I mentioned this earlier, but I had extremely way too high expectations of the type of parent I was going to be, and I'm still honestly battling that part every day. I will make a mistake and I'll beat myself up for it, and it's just something I'm still working through. But a lot of people feel this way because they tell themselves, well, I'm adopting, so I need to be the best possible parent because this kid has already gone through hardship. And while that's true, you also are never going to be perfect. We are humans. We're not perfect. I am certainly far, far from perfect. I mean, spend a week with me parenting and you'll see it. But I think there's just this feeling that you have to be that way to be an adoptive parent, and man, it just really wears on you. I think another reason that people fall into post-adoption depression is that you feel very isolated. So, for example, if you do not have any friends or family who have adopted, who understand that situation, you may just have no one to really talk to. Yes, you can talk to people who have kids, and there are certain struggles that are the same, but in my case, it's just very different to talk to someone who has biological kids versus adopted kids. My biggest struggle with it is that a lot of times you'll be expressing a struggle that your child is having because they're adopted, and they'll just say, oh, that's just a normal kid thing. Like, every kid experiences that. You don't need to worry, that's nothing. And I think that these people think they're coming across as being really helpful, but really it's not, because then you think, well, if this is normal and it's making me feel this bad, what's wrong with me? And I definitely went through that because people always tell me, oh, that's normal, kids do that sometimes. And that's because they didn't always realize the severity that one of her behaviors was at. Like, I don't want to just say, oh, she's adopted, so she's going to have all these problems. But there is just a different set of needs with an adopted kid. And for people to tell you that's just totally normal, all kids do that, I don't think it's actually as helpful as they think it is. Another way that you can just feel really isolated as an adoptive parent is just the fact that maybe your friends and family aren't stepping up and really helping you in the ways that you thought they would. Again, those expectations versus reality. And maybe they're not stepping up and helping as much as they probably would have if you had had a biological kid, which can also sting and kind of leave you feeling a little bit bitter. I did not relate to this category, actually. I feel like our community at our church really stepped up and helped us. I mean, people brought us meals for the first few weeks. Like, I felt like I had people to talk to. I just wasn't always choosing to seek them out. And so, like I said, that's not something I personally related to, but that is extremely, extremely common. And another way that we can feel really isolated as adoptive parents that can lead to this post-adoption depression is because we're oftentimes trying to prove to everyone else that we can handle what we're doing. Because I think anyone who adopts, there's usually one or two naysayers in your life who are like, what are you doing? This isn't a good idea. Or, can you handle this? And so once you're actually going through the thick of it and everything's really difficult, you don't want that person to know that you're struggling, because that's going to prove them right. I don't know, maybe that's just me because I'm stubborn, but that is definitely a thought that I had. I didn't want to prove to them that I couldn't handle it. And that's really a problem, because when we don't have community, or we're afraid to talk to people about the feelings that we're having, we can never get over them because we're not ever talking through them. We're not being told that it's okay to feel that way. or whatever, and so you're kind of stuck in that cycle of post-adoption depression. And obviously postpartum depression is extremely difficult as well. Thankfully, more people are starting to talk about that, and I'm really glad to hear that more people are opening up. But there are a lot more people who have biological kids and experience postpartum depression than there are people who adopt and have post-adoptive depression. So it is hard to find that community. First thing you need to do if you want to try to overcome this post-adoption depression is to find someone to talk to. Even if it's one person, find a friend who is empathetic, find a family member that you trust and loves you unconditionally. If you really don't have any of that, maybe your social worker is actually very kind and a good resource. I know that's not always the case. I did feel like our social worker was amazing and I could ask her questions and tell her things. Use those people. If you do not have anyone physically face-to-face in your life that you can talk to, go online. I mean, is it the best solution? Not necessarily, but it is far better than nothing. There's so many forums online. There's so many like Facebook groups for adoptive parents that you could go to and actually just like talk and express yourself. And you know what? If you need to make a separate account because you don't want anyone to see what you're typing, do it. Like, go on and talk to other people who have adopted, and then you won't feel as alone. Even better would be to find an adoption support group in person. Our adoption agency actually has a support group every Friday night at 7 p.m. and it's really nice because all the families come, childcare is provided, and all the parents can talk in a room about what's going on, and they can get advice from other people, and even just to tell other people who understand what it's like. So look around your community and see if there's anything like that. I know our church also has an adoption support group that meets, and just start asking around and see if you can find anything. Anything would help. Speaking of talking to someone, if you are married and you've adopted, talk to your spouse. Make sure that you are setting aside time a couple of times a week to just talk and maybe have some questions. This sounds really formal, but maybe just have a few questions that you ask each other. Like, how are you doing emotionally with the adoption right now? Or what can I do to help you deal with things better? And it's kind of crazy, but I feel like those little questions can go a long way in just showing that you're supporting your spouse and that you care for them and that you're willing to step up. And I think it will leave both of you feeling more empowered when you realize that you can step up and kind of carry the load for one another. Okay, this next one to me as an introvert is extremely important, is find time to be away from your child. Yes, even during the cocooning phase. That might be controversial, but I think that you need to maintain your sanity. And if you never get a second alone, you're not going to be able to maintain your sanity. If you can do that, that's awesome. I would not be able to. I really struggled at the beginning because we did not have people who could babysit for us. They had to be fingerprinted. We didn't have people. We don't live near family. But eventually some people stepped up, started babysitting for us, and it made a huge difference because I didn't feel as trapped. Obviously, I was still going to adopt my daughter. I was still in the adoptive placement. But I didn't feel like I had to be home all the time with her, never having a break, never seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. I highly recommend if you're married, go on a date or go out with friends. Take a time, maybe you and your spouse can trade off and you can go have some time alone. My husband and I did this summer, actually. We each took turns watching our daughter at different times, at least a couple times a week, so that we could go somewhere else, even if it was just to sit at a coffee shop and drink coffee or hot chocolate or a tea and just be alone for a little bit. It is worth it. I also would recommend taking a weekend away from your kid at least a few months in if you think they can handle it. Even if it's just one night and you're just going a little bit away, it will just feel like a big break to you, and it can really help you come back stronger and with a fresh perspective. And I think also just being able to plan something that you can look forward to, whether it's once a week, like maybe there's a class you could do once a week. I don't know, I don't do things like that, but or if it's like you schedule to hang out with a friend once a week, or maybe you're scheduling a trip for like several months down the road, something that you can look forward to, because like I said earlier, once you're in that adoption process, your goal is like looking forward to adopting that child. Once the child's in your house, there's really not a lot to look forward to. I mean, obviously you're looking forward to daily life with your child, but that can get really difficult sometimes. So find something fun you can look forward to in the future. And last but not least, do not be afraid to seek professional help for your post-adoption depression. I think it is a very common experience for most adoptive parents. It's nothing to feel ashamed of. Like I said, I've struggled through all of these, and I hope that this vulnerability I'm showing through this video on YouTube will somehow reach out to you and help you know that it is okay if you feel sad after adoption. It's okay if you're having those feelings, it's normal. And if you go talk to a mental health professional, to your doctor, and just find someone who has experience with adoption or experience working with adoptive parents, I think it could go a long way if you're finding yourself stuck in this cycle of post-adoption depression for a very long time. Now, I will say that I am currently almost a year from the time our daughter was placed with us, and I can look back now and say, wow, I was extremely depressed in those first few months. I don't even think I quite realized it at the time how bad I felt. I just thought, this is my life now, I have to deal with this. So really examine yourself, ask yourself, do these things apply to me? If pretty much everything I said applied to you, it might be worth looking into either support group or looking into counseling or finding someone you can talk to so you don't have to walk through this alone. So I really hope that this video helped you in some way. If you are getting ready to adopt, maybe it prepared you to know what's normal. If you have already adopted and you're going through this, I hope it just helped you feel a little less alone in your struggle. I have gone through this struggle. I'm still a good parent. My daughter is very loved. We're very happy as a family now, but it was a rough few months at the beginning. Also, I put my Instagram handle down below, so if you would like to direct message me, if you have a question about post-adoption depression, or if you just want someone to talk to, like, I'm here. So send me a message if you want to talk about that, or if you have any other questions about my experience with post-adoption depression. My hope is that this will help you. And if you like this video and you want to see more adoption content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And I actually post a new video every Thursday, and I definitely have some good adoption ones coming up in the next couple of months. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Hope you have a great day.